Are you British? Are you thinking of coming to America for the first time? Well, this is the video for you because we're going to talk to you about the best advice we think you should be getting about your first trip here to the US. Hi, I'm Susie.
Hi, I'm Paul.
Welcome to Here and There with Him and Her.
So this is a companion piece, I think. Is it a companion piece or is it the opposite of? I think it's the opposite of. We did a couple of videos for people from the USA traveling to the UK for the first time. Yes. And so we thought we'd do the reverse and do a video for people from the UK who are traveling to the US for the first time. It's a bit different for you. You were born here, so you had certain sets of particular skills before you came here. But I first came to the US in the late 1990s, and there were a lot of things that caught us unaware. So we'd like to provide you with some top tips.
Mm-hmm.
First thing, when you land at the airport, first thing you're going to do, probably, you're probably down in Florida, I'd guess, or you're doing a fly drive out west or something like that, or maybe California doing the Highway 1, is you'll go and find your car, your hire car.
Yeah. Your rental.
Your rental, yes. The key thing to remember is drive on the right. Easy way to remember this is the steering wheel will be on the opposite side of the car that you normally expect it to be. Top tip. So it's steering wheels on the left, a left hooker as we used to call them back in the UK. So one of the things I would, if I was doing this years ago, I would say about using a credit card to secure your deposit and things like that. But I think that's pretty much universal now, isn't
universal.
it? So traffic light sequences.
Yeah,
when
this
you get on
is
the road, different. It's red to stop,
green to go.
green to go.
Yeah, so there's no
There's
red.
no transition, is
There's
there?
no red.
Yeah.
In the UK, it's red, then red and amber. They don't
Yeah.
call it amber even. They call it yellow. But the traffic light's literally just red and then boom, green.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. There's not that get ready kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Although they do go red, green, yellow, red for stopping. Yes.
So something's just occurred to me that we've not got on our list, but it popped into my head.
What's that?
And that was, you might feel very confident driving along on what you consider the wrong side of the road, but you have to be careful when you turn, that you don't turn into what you would naturally want to do. Because I tried that once, didn't you? I can still hear that scream you made. It still reverberates around my head.
That's because the roads are wider, and some areas what you think is just a single lane might actually be more than one lane.
Yeah.
And so you think you're turning into the other side of the road, and you're just turning into the other lane on the same side of the road, and that can cause problems.
Yeah.
So, and they have some very wide turns.
Screaming wife can be one of them.
I would also just put in here that they're all automatic cars, aren't they?
Yes. So that's it. When we go back now, we don't bother with a manual. We always get automatic. I've forgotten how to drive a manual, to be honest with you.
So just don't be surprised when there's only 2 pedals and not 3.
Yeah. The other thing we have to mention is car size as well.
Yeah.
You know how car hire people break down the size cars. Luxury, mid-size. The cars that we're more used to the size of in the UK are at the lower end, I would say.
They call them compact.
Compacts. Your average kind of car you pick up for your holiday rental is going to be a big thing.
Like a sedan.
Yeah.
They call it a mid-size sedan,
because you're traveling with suitcases, so you need something to move your suitcase. Unless you're traveling very light, you're going to need something to haul your suitcases to your hotel or your villa or whatever you're staying in.
Yeah.
I was going to say the other thing as well is the terminology, which you were going to.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Everybody knows this, and if you don't know it, then here goes. What we call the boot, the Americans call the trunk. What we call the bonnet, the Americans call the hood. What we call the windscreen, the Americans call the windshield. So it's windshield wipers, not windscreen wipers.
Yeah.
What we would call a motorway, they call highways. Now there are interstates.
Yeah, they literally do what they say.
Yeah.
So an interstate is one that goes between states.
Yeah. And they are numbered in a particular way as well, aren't they? So they're
Even numbers go east-west.
east-west,
Odd
even.
numbers go up-down, north-south.
North-south, yeah. Yeah, look at that. Huh? It's like we planned it that way. What else is there? Oh, yes. Again, something that's caused friction
No, hold on. He
occasionally.
forgot one there. Yield. When we say give way in the UK, they say yield over here.
Yeah, yeah. So, and always stop at a stop sign here as well.
Yes, always. For a count of 3 full seconds.
Yeah. Talking of signs.
Oh, actually, speaking of, before we go on to that, just came to me. You can turn right.
Yes.
You can turn right on a red light
That's the one,
if there's no oncoming traffic. That's
Yeah.
another thing that's different.
Now, that might vary from state to state.
Yeah.
Some
Have a
states
look.
check where you are because they might tell you at the rental place beforehand.
But also, there are some junctions that actually specifically will have a sign.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do a sign up there where the traffic lights dangle down that will say no turn on red.
Yeah.
So assume you can unless you're told otherwise.
Yeah. Signage.
Mm-hmm.
If you're coming from the UK, you'll find signage quite confusing in the US. You probably get used to it before you go home. But whereas in the UK, we're used to say for a junction, you're given a countdown and those signs, 3, 2, 1 before the junction.
Yeah, when you come off the motorway.
On an exit ramp. Signage, you get well in advance, I would say, for where you're going or where you want to go for turnings and junctions. Here, it tends to be right on the turn.
You kind of get a little bit on the side that says, coming up in half a mile or something like that. But after that, and some of the lane can be confusing because sometimes there is a lane to turn off specifically, or there might not be a lane to turn off specifically, as in like the lane disappears as you go off. I would also say if you're on roads, it may seem like a silly thing, but it's not as obvious sometimes, is that even that's just signage at eye level is very different, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're coming from the UK to the US as a driver, you're kind of set in where to look at what eye level to look for certain signs, and that is very different over here. It's taken me a long time to figure that out.
Another thing that caused me confusion the first time I was driving here, or the first time I was navigating properly here, is junction numbers. Because if you're driving on a UK motorway, then the numbers are sequential, aren't they? So junction 5, junction 6, junction 7. Here, they are different. They're on the mile.
They're based on
miles between, or miles along that particular highway, which can be, until you get on top of it, it can be a bit confusing.
Yeah, and you'll see mile markers, like smaller signs that are small markers that are
not big
mile
signs,
markers,
small signs,
and they are there like that's in case you break down, so you can say I'm near mile marker such and such. I will also say if you are driving across state lines on the same road, you can actually sort of get up to 599 miles, but then you cross state lines and it goes to 0 again.
Yeah,
they don't carry on into the next state.
No.
And speaking of carrying on, when I first got my job, when we moved over here, we looked up, didn't we, on the map, and we got directions, and it said that we had to go from like one road to another road to another road to another road. It was like 4 different names of roads. Once you drive it, it's all the same road. They just randomly change names at certain points. So, one was Rama Road that turned into Idlewild. It was literally the same road, just chopped into 4 different names. And not quite understanding why, but just be aware of these things.
The other thing is when you are driving on the big roads here, on the highways and the interstates, in the UK, you have to. Well, you're supposed to maintain lane discipline. You know, slower vehicles on the
Inner
inner
lanes.
lane, and the other two outer lanes are for overtaking only. Here, it's more like think Mad Max or a Roman chariot race. You basically you can drive in any lane you like, which will lead to you sometimes seeing a big truck hurtling down what we would consider the fast lane.
Yes.
And it is a bit of a shock to the system if you're used to driving in the UK. As a find the speed that you're comfortable at driving at and stay in that lane. And if someone wants to get around you, they'll get around you. Just stay in the lane that you feel most comfortable in.
Yeah. Also, I two things. One popped into my head is they call indicators turning signals as well,
Oh
don't
yeah,
they?
yeah.
Which are just not obligatory.
Yes,
It seems.
it
It
seems
just
to
seems some
be.
people may use them, some people won't.
Yeah,
But the big one for me is they don't seem to learn. Well, I'm not seem to. We know that because we teach children
we did the driving test
of
in as
driving
well.
test age.
Yeah.
They don't learn about stopping distances.
Yeah.
So you will have a lot of drivers on they're going at high speeds that may not be that far away from you. We in the UK, as part of our driving test, we have to know stopping distances, and there are actually some motorways that actually have like those chevron shapes.
Yes,
to
keep
give
the
you a
distance.
visual of like how much space you should have, because you can't break the laws of physics. So just because you think you might be able to stop, actually, you know, physics is going to take in. I know this, I teach physics. So just be aware that you keep your stopping distance, but it can feel a bit scary initially, can't it? That people kind of really come very far up your backside.
Especially when it rains. If you're in a state where it doesn't rain that often, people don't change the way they drive.
Yeah.
They don't really take notice of the rain, and of course your stopping distances increase, don't they, in rain? They don't seem to know about.
And we've also come to realise that the road surfaces aren't quite the same, because in the UK we're used to rain. We have road surfaces where that rain dissipates quite quickly.
There's a big camber, so it goes off to the sides. Here, roads tend to be a bit more level.
So hydroplaning is a big risk over here, because you can get a lot of rain in a very short space of time, can't you?
But after all that, it is, especially when you're out west or somewhere like that and you're driving on the roads out there, sometimes it's just you and nobody else, and it is quite spectacular, isn't
Definitely.
it? So don't be put off from what we're saying, because once you do get to drive over, it's quite an experience.
Yes.
All right. We were talking about the weather there.
Yeah, weather. So we mentioned this in the other version, the UK one. We say that weather varies quite dramatically throughout the day in the UK, but it varies quite dramatically across the United States as well.
Up and down.
Up and down. And so we just wanted to point out, just really quickly here, is that just because you may think going to a certain destination in the summer is a good idea, you might want to check, because we have just this past year gone to Vegas in July, and it was 113 degrees
in the shade.
In the shade, that's Fahrenheit. And so it wasn't. I mean, in Vegas, it's not as bad because a lot of things are inside.
Well, it's geared to allow you to move around without going outside. Lots of places like that, and they have monorails and things, don't they?
But
still, you've got to get off the monorail at some point and walk between places.
Yeah.
And a pair of us were melting. When we're waiting for a seat in a restaurant and we have to stand outside,
it can get
quite uncomfortable.
Also, a few years back, we went to Washington, D.C. in the summer.
Yeah.
I nearly killed somebody because they wouldn't let us off the tram. And I could see air conditioning was available to me in 1 minute walk, but he had to do the whole Gettysburg Address, didn't he, that tour guide? Yeah. And I nearly killed the fella. So we're just trying to let you know that...
And the taxi driver going back because he insisted on winding down the windows. But that's another story for another time.
What we're saying is that just do a double check. Like, if you can only go in the summer, then fine, you're kind of limited. But don't always think that just because it's, British summertime weather is going to be a good time to visit some places.
So when you've arrived and you finally negotiated the roads and you get to your hotel or your villa or wherever you're staying, when you get to your hotel room, you might find that your electronic devices, if you've brought them with you, will need an adapter of some kind to work, because most American sockets are designed for this kind of plug. Some are 3-pin, but it's a small round one.
Yeah.
What would fit in that side of this US to UK converter
Adapter.
Been here too long.
Speaking of, because a converter is there to help you convert the voltages, because there is a lower voltage in the US. The UK has a 230 voltage coming from the outlets from the sockets, whereas the US is usually 120 volts. So if you did bring a device such as a cell phone, mobile phone, laptop, they usually have a range that they work with anyway. So usually around 110 volts to 230. So they're all good.
But if you're staying in a hotel, again, they'll have a USB adapter on the in the room somewhere.
But the key thing is that if you did bring something else, and I'll just use a hairdryer as an example, even if you use the adapter and plug that in to the wall, you're not getting the same voltage, which means that your hairdryer may sound as if like it's dying or something, because it's not going to have the same sort of force coming out.
Wheezing like an asthmatic gnat. Yes.
For want of a better term. Okay, so just be aware of that. And there are no plugs on US sockets, and there will be sockets in hotel bathrooms.
Yes.
Which is something that is not something that's standard in the UK because of the whole electricity and water don't mix type kill you situation. Just be aware of that.
Okay. So you've braved your hotel, you've stowed your gear. What we would say then is, if you're going to drive between places, be very aware. The distances in America are vast compared to what you're used to. I remember a tour guide in Boston long ago said to me when I was traveling, in America, 100 years is everything, and 100 miles is nothing, and in Europe, vice versa. So be used to someone saying, "Oh yeah, it's not that far away."
But it is.
Yeah, add a bit more to that, because they're so used to driving around, hooting around in their cars that
they don't know the distances. They don't understand the distances.
The concept of different distances is not like ours.
So we wanted to make you aware of this in case you're thinking that, okay, I've got a week, I'm having a holiday in the US. I'll just, maybe enter the country in New York, but I can easily drive over to Chicago or something like that. You can, I'm not saying you can't, just be aware that's going to take a chunk of time
days
away from your holiday. So you don't want to plan something where you're going to spend the majority of your time in a car counting miles as they go by, unless it's a road trip and that's something that you want to experience. But just be aware that it can take a long time to get from one major city to another if you are driving.
If it's not so much seeing the mile markers zipping by your window that you want to see in the US, but you're interested in seeing different places, consider spending the money instead of hiring a car.
Do internal flights.
Do an internal flight, because if you're stuck with a 2-week window and you want to see as much as you can, maybe for your testing the ground for your next trip, and you want to sample as much, you might want to be flying around the place.
Yeah.
Which is a lot easier here, I think, than
it is. But just again, be aware, you don't want to spend most of your holiday in transit somewhere.
No, unless you're a transit freak. If you're a train lover, then or a car lover, then that's great. But
so this kind of feeds into the next one, because we do understand that most people come over to the US with a destination in mind.
Yeah. So like people would come to Florida, they want to do all the theme parks and Kennedy and Space Station and things like that.
Yeah, or you want to go to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Or you want to do LA or something like that. And you may not actually wish to venture further afield. And we're not saying, like based on what we just said, we're not saying you should travel great distances, but be aware that like not everything happens in all the touristy bit. Like that's not always the
Yeah.
coolest spaces to go to. A lot of cool stuff happens just on the perimeter of all of these places as well.
Yeah. And it's of course worth getting out to places where they don't normally get tourists, because then you can trade on your accent.
Yeah, we'll have more
Yeah,
about that
more
later
about that
on.
later.
So it seems that we're doing it again. We are thinking we can squeeze a lot of material into a short video, and that's not happening. So
No,
this looks like another two-parter, doesn't it?
it's got that looks about it. Yeah.
So we're going to leave it there, but please make sure that you subscribe, because there is going to be a part 2 to this one. And so
And
also,
again, if they've got any specific questions about areas they want to go in the US or places they want to visit, drop us a line. If we can help, we'll
yeah,
give you information.
or if you have any advice that you think we should pass on to these Brits coming over to the US for the first time, please let us know in the comments. We just wanted to start the conversation. We haven't been everywhere. We haven't done everything. So there's plenty for us to learn as well.
Yep.
So we'll leave it there for now. Refresh our mugs with yet some more tea.
Time again.
And so we will see you there for part 2.
Yep. Take care. Bye for now.